Welcome, Danny. The original film continued to be very popular. Despite the fact it was available on DVD, there'd still be screenings like this, and I would go to them to do Q&As afterwards to support them, and they'd be really intense experiences still. This is many, many years after the film. So Alex Garland, the writer, and I would talk about doing maybe a sequel, a new addition to it. And we worked on a number of different ideas. But it was only when he came up with this idea that we got really energized, and it was to try and write a much bigger story than people maybe expected. That it was about a significant time later, and that it in some way would involve Brexit and the Teletubbies.
Aspetta un attimo prima di continuare.
Iscriviti che è gratis.
Commenta che non possiamo far tutto noi.
Condividi, mica ti devi divertire da solo.
E salva che ti passa.
World becomes more and more incomprehensible, and I think horror is a response to that. And I think one of the really interesting differences is that when we made the first film, I remember them saying very clearly, no women will ever go and see this film. It was like, women just won't go and watch horror. And now that's different. One of the reasons that horror is still remains a very popular genre is because more and more women are going to see it, apparently. Just into, they measure audiences. And certainly when we did test screenings in America for the movie, the focus group they would hold back at the end, which would be about 20 people. The women were very vocal, talking about horror and, the genre and whether this should be called a horror movie or not. Because obviously it is a horror movie, but it's also a very different kind of movie as well. I think that's why horror remains important, is that it's a compelling reason to go to the cinema. It allows you to exercise your fears, disgust, fascination with the horrors, the much greater horrors that continue around the world. It's flexible. It absorbs. You can stretch it to absorb different ideas. You can push it in different directions. It's a wonderful genre to work within. We've shot the second film, which features him as well. And the third film we're trying to raise the money for. So there's a QR code outside that you can donate to as you leave, if you wish. Only kidding. No, that would have been a good idea, actually. But anyway, his journey is the journey of the film. He is expected to follow his father. The community had very much looked backwards to an England that they're rather fond of. It's like the 50s, which is the kind of Brexit thing, which is kind of longing for the old days, and they treat gender in an old-fashioned way, with the boys are boys and the girls are girls. They teach the boys to hunt and to kill and to defend, and the girls stay at home. But his decisions are more reflective of where you see progress going. He doesn't go back to his father at the end of the film, as you saw. He moves forward, actually into danger as it happens, because it's a horror movie, but eventually his eventual journey will hopefully represent progress. Yeah, it's amazing. I cast some young actors his age, like 20 years ago, for a film I made, a family film called Millions, and the difference now in the standard of young acting is amazing. And I think it's Harry Potter has done it. I think kids grow up on Harry Potter and think, I could do that, or why don't I do that? And so they have an ambition to move into that area. And so the standard of child acting has risen, amongst the people that you look for when you're casting. The sequence at the beginning with the deserted London, when COVID hit, there were much press that used those images to say, look, it's come true, and everywhere cities around the world were empty and seemed extraordinarily, it was a very striking representation of the danger there was. So that obviously fed back into the new film. But what fed into it more than that was the way we adapted to COVID over time. Because obviously this is 28 years. You can't keep up the way we first reacted to COVID. you know, suddenly the danger and we all wore masks or gloves or whatever. You can't keep that up for 28 years. It's exhausting. You start taking risks and you start stepping out more. So that was an influence, in a way, on the survivors, the ones who survived. And they do take risks. He takes a 12-year-old boy to the mainland, which is crazy. But he does it because that's what you would do. After 28 years, you become familiar with the risks and how to handle them. But interestingly, more interestingly in a way, is how the virus adapts to 28 years. It changes, it mutates, it evolves, it too wants to survive. And so the behavior, although there are similarities with the first film, with the infected, they now hunt. They don't starve to death. They've learned to hunt. And to hunt, you have to work as a team. So they organize, like there's a pack of them, and they have a leader. These alphas have emerged who kind of lead them. And the slow-lows live on the ground and don't expend much energy. So it was really interesting. COVID was a big thinking influence on what we wanted to portray.